Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 2nd December 2025 and here we have a list of important topics from different newspapers. So one by one, we'll be discussing all these topics in detailed and in-depth manner. So the first topic with which we are going to start this session is about bioremediation in India. Now this topic has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and from the syllabus point of view, this is very important for the General Studies paper 3. Right, so let's understand what exactly is bioremediation and different types of bioremediation, and what is its potential, and what are the challenges, and what should be the way forward in India with respect to bioremediation. Now if we talk about the bioremediation, so in India, so a large amounts of waste is generated every day. So therefore the question is how to manage the large amounts of waste in a sustainable scale. So this is the main question, and the answer for this question is bioremediation. So bioremediation is actually a technique through which the large amounts of waste can be managed and even decomposed in a much more sustainable manner. So this is what is the concept of bioremediation, right? So we all knew that throughout the world, human activity has been creating or generated an unprecedented levels of pollution, whether it is air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, or different other levels of pollution. So we all knew about that, and we are also reading about pollution like every day. Now in fact, as conventional cleanup techniques or technologies, they remain very expensive, right? So if you wanted to clean up any site so which is contaminated, it is very expensive, right? And it is also energy intensive, so it requires more finances and it also requires more energy to clean up any site in a conventional manner. However, so bioremediation is actually use of microorganisms or use of living organisms to detoxify the polluted environment. For example, imagine an area, a site which is a contaminated site, which is a polluted site. So in bioremediation, living organisms will be used to detoxify or decontaminate the already contaminated or polluted environment. Now in fact, this bioremediation as a technique has emerged as a sustainable alternative and also an efficient alternative. It is less expensive and it is also less energy intensive. It is more efficient and even sustainable alternative as well. However, so one thing that we should understand, that India is the country with the largest population in the world, and India is also a country which has been experiencing rapid industrialization, and this rapid industrialization has also generated a large amounts of pollution. Now the large amounts of pollution are easily polluting soil, water, air and existing ecosystems, and limited remediation sources to detoxify, to decontaminate the existing polluted sites. So at this point of time, don't you think that bioremediation as an alternative offers, it offers an alternative to decontaminate, to detoxify the areas which are already contaminated or polluted? However, now as you have already understood, in bioremediation, microorganisms or living organisms are being used to decontaminate or detoxify a certain area which is already contaminated with the pollutants or toxic elements. So this is the actual concept of bioremediation. However, so the bioremediation is further categorized into in-situ bioremediation and ex-situ bioremediation. So let's understand what exactly is in-situ bioremediation. Now in-situ bioremediation, which is also called as intrinsic bioremediation or engineered bioremediation. Now in-situ bioremediation means, imagine that this is a contaminated site, and in this contaminated site, bioremediation technique will be done using various other sub techniques, for example biosparging, bioventing, and biostimulation. So all these techniques are being used at the contaminated site only. However, now imagine another site which is also contaminated site. So however, the pollutants are being transported out of this contaminated site to somewhere else, and then those pollutants are treated in the other areas, which is known as ex-situ bioremediation. So these are the two different types of bioremediation: in-situ bioremediation and ex-situ bioremediation. Now in fact, ex-situ bioremediation is also further categorized into slurry phase bioremediation, which involves bioreactors. And then second phase is solid phase bioremediation. The solid phase bioremediation uses biopiling, land farming, composting, and biofilters. Right, so these are actually the techniques which are part of the bioremediation. Now, as I have already explained you what exactly is bioremediation. So bioremediation means microorganisms or living organisms are being used to decontaminate or detoxify the existing already contaminated sites. Now in fact, what sort of microorganisms are being used? Bacteria can be used as a medium in bioremediation technique. Fungi can be used, algae can be used, and even plants can also be used. For example, a technique called phytoremediation, right? So phytoremediation is a technique in which plants are being used to remove the heavy metals which are present in the water. That may be water and soil. It may be called as phytoremediation. Right, so in bioremediation, living organisms such as bacteria, fungi, algae, and even plants can be used. So why they are being used? To degrade or immobilize the toxic elements, toxic substances which are present in that contaminated sites. Now when we talk about these toxic contaminants, toxic substances, they include oil, heavy metals, pesticides, plastics, and even industrial effluents. So as we have just discussed that India is a rapidly industrializing country, and India has also substantially dependent on agriculture, and in agriculture we have been using excessive fertilizer and pesticide. Fertilizer and pesticides, they are contaminating soil and they are also contaminating water. For example, oil spill, which contaminate the soil and even water as well. So therefore, in this context, bioremediation is considered as a sustainable alternative, and it is less expensive and it is more efficient and less energy consuming technique, right? So therefore this could be considered as a best alternative to decontaminate the already polluted sites. So I hope it is clear. Now let's understand these organisms, bacteria, fungi, algae. So they metabolize pollutants as food, right? So in fact, the living organisms that we use in as part of biodegradation, so what they actually do, they feed on the existing pollutants. They take pollutants as food, converting them into harmless substances. For example, they may convert the heavy metals into water, CO2, and even organic acids, which are less harmful in nature. Right? So however, there are some cases where microbes transform the toxic metals into less mobile and less harmful forms as well. So this is how bioremediation as a technique has been offering sustainable solutions, sustainable alternatives. So as we have already discussed that bioremediation is two different types. So one is in situ bioremediation. I have already explained what exactly is an in situ bioremediation. Now in fact, the treatment at the contaminated site itself is considered as in situ bioremediation. The example of in situ bioremediation is spraying oil degrading bacteria directly on marine oil spills. And second one is removal of contaminated soil or water and treatment in a controlled environment and later restoration. So this is ex situ bioremediation. So these are two different types of bioremediation which are being used to treat the polluted sites, the polluted environment. Now in this context, what role does a biotechnology can actually play? Because bioremediation involves using living organisms. Those living organisms can be produced by using biotechnology. So therefore here biotechnology has a very, very important role to play. Now in this context, the modern bioremediation It actually integrates microbiology with the biotechnology. Now, in fact, through genetically modified microbes, right? So it is very important that those microbes can also be created through the genetically modified techniques, which are GMO microbes. And in fact, the GMO microbes can be used to break down the persistent pollutants. For example, if we talk about the persistent pollutants, they can be like plastics, industrial oils, or oil spills. So they are known as persistent pollutants. So if these persistent pollutants are break down by these microbes, then we can easily decontaminate the existing already contaminated sites, and at the same time the toxicity of this contaminated site also can be substantially minimized or reduced, right? So however, why India needs bioremediation in this context? The first thing, that India is a fast industrializing nation. Now, industrialization has been producing several amounts or large amounts of waste as well, right? So therefore, we have been facing heavy pollution load in India, right? So what is the reason for heavy pollution load? So the main reason could be industrialization. And apart from industrialization, urbanization is also one such reason for heavy pollution load in India. So due to urbanization, what has been happening? The untreated sewage from the urban areas and even industrial effluents, due to large scale industrialization, they are easily entering into the rivers such as Ganga and Yamuna and polluting the rivers. And apart from that, there is very often frequent oil leaks. Now, oil leaks will contaminate the water and they will also contaminate the soil as well. And even pesticide accumulation, because after Green Revolution, so Indian agriculture has become intensive agriculture, and in this intensive agriculture, farmers are excessively using fertilizer and pesticide. And then the soil is contaminated with heavy metals. So therefore, all these factors have been affecting the water and soil. Now, in fact, it will also have serious consequences for the health of human beings and health of the ecosystem as well, right? So therefore, it is very important to reduce the toxic nature of the contaminated sites. And here, bioremediation can play a very, very important role. However, the traditional remediation methods often produce the secondary pollution as well. For example, if we tried to decontaminate the sites using the traditional methods, the traditional remediation techniques, so they very often release the secondary pollutants as well, and they consume very high energy and they are very expensive. So therefore, these techniques are unsustainable for large scale use in India. So therefore, we need a sustainable alternative which consumes lesser energy, which is less expensive, which is more efficient and sustainable, and this alternative could be bioremediation, right? So apart from that, the other factor that we have to understand about bioremediation, it is cost effective and at the same time scalable as well. Scalable in the sense that due to industrialization and urbanization, we have been producing large amounts of waste. So this large amounts of waste can be treated using techniques like bioremediation. And apart from that, it is less expensive or cost effective as well. So that means within a less cost, we can treat a large amount of waste. And at the same time, it may not generate the secondary pollutants as well. So therefore, don't you think that it is more environment friendly and sustainable? So therefore, it is having all these advantages such as low operational costs, minimal energy consumption, and even scalability for large polluted areas. So these are the advantages. For a country like India, bioremediation can be a best technique to decontaminate, to detoxify the already contaminated, polluted sites. Now, apart from that, the bioremediation as a technique is also having a unique advantage. Now, also understand that in bioremediation, we are using living microorganisms. We have been using microbes. So therefore it is environmentally friendly as well. It will not release secondary pollutants, it will not release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere as well. Now the other factor is that now in India is a diverse climatically, so therefore we have a different or diverse climatic zones, and the different climatic zones also support rich microbial ecosystems in India. For example, the indigenous microbes adapted to high temperatures or salinity often outperform the imported species in detoxifying the local pollutants, right? So therefore these rich climatic diversity also supports the microbes and the effectiveness of these microbes when it comes to decontaminating the sites. So let's understand the current status of bioremediation in India. So what exactly is the current status of bioremediation? So one thing that we should understand here is that, so we have understood that bioremediation is a best sustainable alternative for India to manage the existing waste or decontaminate the already polluting sites. So therefore for that particular purpose there is a need for the involvement of research institutes at the national level to find out the best techniques within bioremediation to decontaminate the sites. So if it is having any negative effects, so those negative effects can also be minimized through research and development. So in this context, so bioremediation as a technique still it is in its early phases. However, now in recent times bioremediation has been gaining a lot of attention through government involvement, increasing research, and even the private sector initiatives, because the private sector has also understood the potential of bioremediation. So therefore there is increased attention when the government has been involving, finding about the techniques of bioremediation. The research has increased and even increased private sector participation. So let's understand the government and institutional efforts in this regard with respect to biodiversity. Now we all knew the Department of Biotechnology, it plays a very important role when it comes to producing a new microbes, and those new microbes can sustainably deal with the contaminated sites or decontaminate the existing sites. So it supports several projects under its clean technology program, linking academia with industry firstly. Second, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. So National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, so it plays a central role in designing and implementing large-scale bioremediation solutions as well. However, there are some research innovations as well from different institutes. For example, IIT researchers have already developed cotton-based nanocomposites. And in fact, the cotton-based nanocomposites are capable of absorbing the oil spills. Oil spills also contaminate the water and soil. Secondly, Indian scientists have isolated bacteria, and this bacteria is capable of degrading the toxic soil pollutants. So this is how research is being carried out. Now, in fact, this research is successful. We can scale up bioremediation technique to sustainably manage India's waste generation problem or waste generation issue. Now, in this context, let's understand some issues and concerns along with the way forward as well. Now, if we talk about the risks, now if we introduced the genetically modified microbes, so there is always a concern that these genetically modified microbes may become harmful to the indigenous ecosystems. Now, one thing that we should understand that why we are not allowing genetically modified crops into Indian agriculture, because of there may be potential disruptions potentially harmful to the indigenous ecosystem, and that's why we're not introducing genetically modified crops. So in a similar way, if we produce GM microbes through the biotechnology, so can it disrupt indigenous ecosystems? Can it emerge as harmful to indigenous ecosystem? If not properly monitored, this could be a key question here. Secondly, lack of robust biosafety guidelines, this could be another major problem here. Right, so we need to have guidelines, protocols, laws, regulations, and even trained personnel. So if we don't have any of these things, it further increases the risk. And secondly, public mistrust in microbial technologies can impede its adoption. So these could be some challenges, some risks addressing this problem. So in this context, what should be the way forward? Now, if we talk about the way forward, so establish national bioremediation standards, guidelines for microbial application monitoring and safety. And then there is a need to create regional bioremediation hubs as well. Now, these regional bioremediation hubs can be created integrating the existing universities, research institutes, local governments, industries. So all the relevant stakeholders must participate in the regional bioremediation hub second. And apart from that, strengthen biosafety mechanisms in line with the Biodiversity Convention. Right? For example, there is a need for proper certification, rigorous testing, and even regulatory reforms for these microbes as well. Otherwise, these microbes may emerge as a threat or may emerge as harmful to the existing ecosystem and even human health as well. Now, in fact, public awareness, public engagement is also a very important factor that one should focus on. So for that, there is a need for campaigns to build awareness about the benefits and safety of microbe-based technologies. And in fact, there is a need to integrate bioremediation into the existing national missions which are launched. For example, Swachh Bharat mission, which aims at sanitation in rural and urban areas, and then Namami Gange program and even Smart Cities program for sustainable management of industrial effluents and urban sewage waste, and even Namami Gange program to clean up river Ganga. Right, so these measures must be taken to further strengthen the bioremediation architecture in India to treat waste in a much more sustainable and cost-effective manner. Right. So next important topic is about the rare earth elements production, and can India become self-reliant? Because as of now, with respect to rare earth elements, India has dependent on other countries. So can really India become self-sufficient, self-reliant on rare earth elements production? Let's understand this, and this has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and from the syllabus point of view, this could be important for General Studies paper 3. Now let's understand what are these rare earth elements before discussing can India really become self-reliant in rare earth elements production. Now if we talk about these rare earth elements, they comprising of 17 critical minerals. 17 critical minerals together are being called as rare earth elements. For example, this is the list of 17 critical minerals. And in fact, they are indispensable for the modern technologies due to exceptional magnetic strength that they have, high conductivity, and even thermal resistance. So because of all these unique features, characteristics that they have a huge industrial applications. Right? So for example, defense, automobiles, and even different industries, they have a huge applications. And because of this reason, the countries all over the world have been emphasizing on rare earth minerals. So this is the list of 17 rare earth minerals. It is important. Please kindly go through all these 17 rare earth elements. However, in fact, the rare earth elements and its increasing traction, countries increasing attention on rare earth elements, is because of the potential applications in manufacturing the electric vehicles. Now, one thing that we should understand here, the countries, because of the climate change concerns, they wanted to make a transition towards the electric vehicles. They wanted to make a transition towards renewable energy systems and other electronics. So if we wanted to manufacture renewable energy systems, or if we wanted to manufacture other electronics and even defense applications along with manufacturing of electric vehicles, the rare earth elements are crucial, because the rare earth elements have applications in all these fields. Right? So we can no longer dependent on countries like China, because China sometimes imposing some kind of a barriers that India may not be able to access the rare earth elements, because you have already understood why rare earth elements are very important to manufacture electric vehicles, to manufacture renewable energy systems, maintain them, electronics, and defense applications. However, so what India planned to achieve self-sufficiency in rare earth elements? So India recently approved 7,280 crore rupees scheme to manufacture rare earth permanent magnets. Right? So these rare earth permanent magnets, this particular scheme makes a significant step towards reducing India's import dependence and so enhancing the strategic reliance as well. Because these are all sectors which are considered as a strategic sectors. So therefore we cannot depend on any one single country for these rare earth minerals. So that's why it is important to achieve self-sufficiency, and it is also important to launch schemes like this so that we can reduce our dependence on other countries. Now, if you look at the countries which have been producing the rare earth elements, now China dominates in terms of rare earth elements production and manufacturing. You can see that 69.77% of rare earth elements are coming from China. So China also has a robust rare earth elements manufacturing capabilities. So however, if you look at India, it is just having 0.74%, and that's why India has been heavily and excessively dependent on other countries for the rare earth elements, and that is also why India has been thinking to achieve self-sufficiency when it comes to rare earth elements. So after China, United States dominates with 11.6% of rare earth elements production. So literally both US and China has dominated the rare earth elements production and processing. Right? So here some data has been given. So if you look at the data, the control over the production and processing of rare earth elements, 90% of global rare earth element processing takes place in China alone. So China alone is known for 90% of rare earth elements processing. And even China alone contributes to how much? 70% of the rare earth elements production. And in fact, it holds only 30% of the global reserves of rare earth elements, but it dominates through early investments and even low cost extraction technologies that China has already developed, and that has made China a dominant player in production of the rare earth elements. Now, India is also excessively dependent on the rare earth elements. So you can see that India's imports of rare earth elements from 2019-20 to 23-24. So far in all these years, India has imported 9,729 tons worth of rare earth elements, and out of 9,729 tons of rare earth elements, 6,454 tons we have been imported from China. Right? So China may use it against India as well. For example, what if China says that we don't sell rare earth elements to India? Now, where will India go if we are not self-sufficient in producing rare earth elements? So that is the main problem here, right? So therefore, here China has been using rare earth elements for weaponization of supply chains, and that is the key concern. Because we have already understood that this 90% of rare earth elements processing takes place in China. So China literally produces 70% of the rare earth elements. Right? So therefore, China has been frequently using this rare earth elements and its domination for the geopolitical advantage. And it has been using it as a geopolitical tool as well against India as well. For example, in 2009, export quotas led to a WTO dispute because China has come up with export quotas and China lost the case in 2015. And in 2020, so it has imposed export restrictions. And in 2021, export licensing to curb supplies to select industries. And 2024, new restrictions on 7 rare earth elements and finished magnets. And in fact, all these measures may hit India. In future also, China may use its domination as a geopolitical tool against India. So therefore, it is important to achieve self-sufficiency. India should look for the existing rare earth element reserves in India. India should invest in low-cost extraction technologies, and India should also collaborate with other countries like United States and the African countries, and India should also make investments in these countries so that India may achieve self-sufficiency when it comes to the rare earth elements extraction and production, because rare earth elements are very important for other industries. For example, electric vehicle manufacturing, renewable energy systems, defense, and all other sectors, rare earth elements are very important. Now, why India is focusing on rare earth elements? What is the need that why India has been focusing on this? Now, in fact, several industries have been excessively and heavily dependent on the rare earth elements. For example, electric mobility and batteries, wind turbines and solar technologies manufacturing, missiles, radars, and even consumer electronics manufacturing, for example, laptops, mobile phones, and all other devices. So therefore, several industries have been directly or indirectly dependent on rare earth elements. So therefore, we cannot dependent on one single country for these rare earth elements. So we need to achieve self-sufficiency when it comes to producing our own rare earth elements. However, despite holding 8% of world's rare earth element reserves, now we are currently having 8% of world's rare earth elements, but India imports over 53,000 metric tons of rare earth elements in the financial year 24-25. Right? So therefore, heavy dependence on rare earth elements on other countries will make India strategically vulnerable, because countries like China may use this dependence as a geopolitical tool. Now, what policy initiatives have been launched by the government of India to achieve self-sufficiency in in rare earth elements production? For example, National Critical Minerals Mission has been launched with 34,300 crore of value over 7 years, and this aimed at exploration, processing, recycling of lithium, cobalt, and even other rare earth elements. It also focuses on research, development, all these other factors, and opening rare earth element sector to private players post August 2023. Now, in fact, this is considered as a major structural shift, because private sector can actually bring expertise, and they can also invest in technologies which makes the extraction of these rare earth elements cost effective. Third, auction of new mining blocks and promoting recycling of magnets from end of life electronics as well. So these are the policy initiatives that India has been launched, and these policy initiatives also aimed to make India self-sufficient in rare earth elements production. Now, what challenges that India may face in this context? Let's understand this aspect as well. Now, first thing is that India don't have the processing infrastructure and even refining infrastructure. Now, in fact, 90% of the global processing of rare earth elements is dominated by China. So that's how China has invested heavily in processing and refining of rare earth metals. But India produces less than 1% of the global rare earth elements. And in fact, this is largely because we don't have refining and processing capacity. So India should focus on refining and processing capacities. And apart from that, regulatory and institutional constraints are also other factors. For example, slow environmental clearances in India, limited exploration licenses are being given to the private sector. And apart from that, there is also a high government control, this leading to investor hesitancy as well. So if all these factors and constraints existing, the private investors are not ready to invest in exploration of rare earth elements. And apart from that, there are some technological and skill gaps which are also existing. For example, specialized metallurgical expertise is lacking, high-end chemical processing are required for the extraction and processing of these rare earth elements, and long gestation periods and high capital investments are required. So because of all these factors, the private sector is not ready to invest in rare earth elements. Now, what should be the way forward in this context? Let's understand the way forward as well. So if we talk about the way forward, why don't we deregulate and incentivize the private sector participation across mining and refining, and then develop rare earth element clusters all across India? For that to happen, so integrate mining, metal extraction, alloying and magnet manufacturing, and promote recycling, and also invest in research and development. So research and development in processing, refining, extraction, so cost effective technologies of rare earth elements. So all these factors are very, very important when it comes to India achieving self-sufficiency in rare earth elements production, extraction and utilization. India will not dependent on other countries for these rare earth elements. The next important news topic is Supreme Court gives CBI free hand to stop digital arrest scams. Now, in fact, digital arrest is a buzzword which is very often in use. And this topic has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and from the syllabus point of view, this could be very important for the General Studies paper 3. Now let's understand what exactly is a digital arrest before actually discussing this. Now, in fact, digital arrest is a new cyber fraud. Now, as part of digital fraud, the accused video call a person and pose as a law enforcement agency officials like CBI officials, ED officials, police officers. And once they call the victim, they give threats of arrest in the name of fake international parcels of banned drugs. And then organized economic crime operated by a cross-border crime syndicates are actually part of the digital arrest. Now, in fact, in India, the digital arrest crimes have been increasing, and Supreme Court has taken it very seriously, and Supreme Court has also asked CBI to investigate these scams related to the digital arrest, right? So therefore, it is the topmost cyber frauds that India has seen in recent years. Digital arrest is the topmost cyber fraud because the digital arrest has been exploiting people, particularly the elderly and other people who are not aware about all these things. So exploiting the public fear about the law enforcement agencies and even technological vulnerabilities, even weak regulatory enforcement. So therefore, digital arrest has been exploiting all these different things. Now, with over 3,000 crore already siphoned from the victims, mostly from the elderly, the Supreme Court has termed the situation enough is enough. Now, it's the high time that the law enforcement agencies must consider the issue of digital arrest as seriously as possible and start investigating and start taking all the steps to prevent the crimes like digital arrest, right? And in fact, Supreme Court has also mandated an unprecedented pan-India CBI investigation over the digital arrest scams. Now let's understand what are the digital arrest scams, right? So in fact, if we talk about the digital arrest scams, so these are the scams which involves a fraudsters, right? So these fraudsters impersonate themselves as a law enforcement officials and they call victims, right? So once they call victims, they coerce the victims into believing that they are involved in a criminal activity. For example, their links, in fact, international parcels, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking. So they start threatening the victims through the video calls. And they also ask the victims that don't inform this to anybody. And if you want your name to be cleared from this, you have to pay a certain amount of money. So this is how the digital arrests have been taking place all across the country. So as Supreme Court has held that so far 3,000 crore Indian rupees have been siphoned off through the digital arrests across the country, mostly from the senior citizens. Now how it works? A typical case involves a scammer, a fraudulent person, a fraudster posing as a police officer or any other law enforcement agency officer from a different state. Fake FIRs are being registered, fabricated video calls, even doctored police IDs. And they force the victims to transfer money to verification accounts, usually mule accounts opened by the fraudulent persons. right? So in fact, the elderly persons who are not aware of these scams are increasingly and disproportionately targeted due to the fear and unfamiliarity with these processes, right? So this is how the digital arrest scams are being actually conducted, and this is the modus operandi of conducting the digital arrest, right? So we have already understood this as well, and you can also go through this modus operandi of fraudsters as part of the digital arrest. Now, in fact, what Supreme Court has said in this matter, the judicial intervention and CBI mandate, right? So in this context, the Supreme Court has invoked extraordinary circumstances, so has directed the Central Bureau of Investigation to investigate the digital arrest scams as the first priority, understood its seriousness, to investigate the scams of digital arrest all across the country, including states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab and Jharkhand, because there are some states which have already withdrawn the consent for the CBI to go to those states and investigate the matters, and to grant consent under Section 6 of the Delhi Police Special Establishment Act. So therefore, the Supreme Court order has allowed CBI to form a national team of police officers and even domain experts to start investigating the matter of the digital arrest. And apart from that, so they have been using technology and even the international coordination, right? So if you talk about this, they are also using this international code. For example, court tasked the Reserve Bank of India with explaining how artificial intelligence and machine learning tools can detect fund layering across the multiple accounts. And apart from that, CBI must coordinate with the Interpol, an international agency which helps all the countries which are parties to this Interpol to investigate, to find fraudsters, to trace foreign-based cybercrime hubs. Secondly, under IT rules of 2021, online intermediaries must assist by sharing relevant data. The online intermediaries including Twitter, WhatsApp, X, Facebook. So all these are online intermediaries. So under IT rules of 2021, these online intermediaries must assist by sharing relevant data with the concerned enforcement agencies. In this case, it is Central Bureau of Investigation. Right, so that's all for today, and thank you so much. So please subscribe our YouTube channel and also like the video. Thank you so much.